Hi everyone, this is Paul here from the Magdalene Centre. Today I'm doing the report for Neptune Retrograde, which begins on the 18th of June and finishes on the 24th of November. And I'll be outlining some of the key themes and lessons that this particular retrograde holds for us. Before I do that though, I just want to clarify, as I always do, that the astrology doesn't control us in any way, shape or form. It helps us to understand what the energies around us are doing, what kinds of spiritual lessons are available for us to be learning at this time, or what we should ideally be focusing on, but it doesn't predict how things will unfold or how reality around us will change, because that is determined by us and how we exercise our free will. Now with Neptune in Pisces, Neptune is the ruler of Pisces, so the Piscean energy is much more intense at this point in time as a result of the double combinations. It's like Piscean energy squared. And Pisces rules pure consciousness. It rules things like enlightenment, bliss, meditation, but on its shadow end it also deals with things like addiction, fantasy, illusion, escapism. So with Neptune in Pisces, these themes are particularly accentuated right now, but Neptune in Pisces is also an opportunity in time for us to undergo a spiritual revolution or spiritual rejuvenation or spiritual renewal. So this has happened periodically in the past, and typically speaking, when Neptune is in Pisces, collectively we're ready for a new truth or a new spiritual revolution to unfold, and this is what we're going through right now. But for this to happen in a constructive kind of way, we need to make sure that whatever spiritual renewal we go through is based on truth and not just more illusions and fantasies. And it's important that we be very honest with ourselves throughout the entire time, so we don't engage in fantasies, we don't engage in delusions, and we don't develop any kind of messianic complex or any saviour complex, because we're not responsible for saving other people. The only people we can save is ourselves in that respect. Now when Neptune turns retrograde, when he's direct, the ego tends to be a lot stronger, so there's a bit of a boundary as such between our sense of self and the deeper or true self, or the unconscious side of ourselves. When Neptune goes retrograde, however, this veil between the two becomes very thin, and the essence or the consciousness of or unconscious side that we've been keeping hidden or buried from us starts coming up. And Neptune and Pisces have a very dissolving kind of energy. I would say that Neptune has a strong connection with the crown chakra, and for the crown chakra to be open, it requires that we let go of some of our earthly attachments. It doesn't mean though that we escape or we avoid any responsibility or avoid any duties we have in the earthly plane, but it means that we learn to be in the world but not of it. We recognise that we are spiritual beings having human experience rather than human beings experiencing or seeking a spiritual experience. So it's helping us to make that shift in consciousness to recognising our spiritual nature. And when Neptune is retrograde in Pisces in particular, we often find that psychic senses are particularly strong, intuition becomes stronger, we also become much more sensitive to the energies around us and much more influenced by it potentially. So one of the things we have to be careful of when Neptune is retrograde is that we don't get drawn into the illusions that other people were presenting, but it's also important that we don't delude ourselves. So quite often this is a time of spiritual truth, and it's a time where some of the delusions that we've been holding on to or trying to live through start breaking down, because Neptune's energy has a dissolving kind of nature to it. It gently dissolves the boundaries of things and allows spirit to flow through and to transform the essence of our internal landscape. And this also happens within the ego itself. The Neptune's energy dissolves the boundaries of the egos and softens it, which allows the ego to go through a transformation of sorts, so that by the time we come out of the Neptune retrograde, the form that our ego has is much more aligned with our true self by stripping away some of the veils of illusion that the ego is made up of. whilst understanding that because we live in an illusory world, the ego is necessary in order for us to interact with the world around us. Otherwise we'd just be floating in the ethers doing nothing. The ego is necessary, but it needs to be humbled and brought into the rightful role as a servant rather than the master, as it were. Now, because this energy this energy is quite strong in terms of psychic energies and sensitivity to other people's vibrations, one thing we need to be mindful of is that we don't become ungrounded, and chances are if we're feeling more anxious than usual, it's because we're feeling ungrounded. So this is where the polarity point of the Neptune retrograde comes in. This is Virgo. Pisces is our spiritual health and our understanding of ourselves as spiritual beings. Virgo, on the other hand, deals with our physical health and mental health, and it's about grounding that spiritual energy into day-to-day reality, and it converts the feelings of compassion and empathy that Pisces engenders and transforms them into acts of service. So we don't just feel compassion for other people, we actually take action to help people. Now, just to be clear here, it's important that whatever actions we take, we're not doing it from a place of a saviour complex or a messianic complex. Whatever acts of service we do, it's important that the intention behind them is not to keep someone in a state of dependency, it's to try and empower that other person. So it's giving them what they need at that point in time rather than necessarily what they want. But it's not necessarily taking direct action or trying to intervene. Sometimes the kind of act is more about just the simple embodiment of that spiritual energy, of being in a position where we naturally radiate that energy out to people, and just by virtue of being near us, that person benefits from the energy. So we need to make sure that whatever we're doing, we do not try to save other people or try to intervene in their lives because we think we know better than them. We don't necessarily know what the other person's gone through. We don't necessarily know how someone's got to a certain position. But it's important that we don't get this attitude that we're supposed to save everyone around us. The only people we can save is ourselves. We can help other people, yes, absolutely. And it's important that if someone is suffering, that we do offer some kind of help where we can. But it's not our job to rescue people. People have to make changes themselves of their own volition. Considering how difficult it can be to change ourselves, is it really a smart idea to try and focus all our energy on trying to change another person to how we think they should be, given how difficult it can be to change our own behaviour? It's a common thing that we have, especially from as our human nature, to try to fix things or correct things. But the thing is, what's right for us may not be right for the other person, or it may not help them learn. Maybe someone needs to go through certain challenges at any given point to develop a stronger character, to help them learn certain lessons that they need to learn at that particular point in time. This doesn't mean that we become cold and uncaring, doesn't mean that we don't help people out, but it's important that we don't enable people at the same time. So when we have assume we have developed love and compassion, it's important that we don't smother other people or try to rescue them and prevent them from learning key lessons that would allow them to stop doing things which cause them problems in the first place. So also with Virgo, it deals with our physical health and mental health. So it's important at this time that we also think about what exercises can we do on a daily basis to help us stay grounded. What do we need to do to keep our minds calm and to use reason when we need to, so that we don't get drawn into an illusion. So it's using that discerning energy of Virgo to help us, because the thing with Neptune in Pisces is the boundaries within ourselves and between ourselves and other people are becoming increasingly thin. So as a result, especially during the retrograde, we're more psychically sensitive to what other people are going through, and if we're not careful, we can end up taking that energy on as our own when it's not actually ours to carry. So working on the Virgo side of polarity, so making sure that we're getting necessary exercise to keep ourselves grounded, and using the discerning faculties of the mind to figure out, is what we're feeling actually our own stuff, or is it something we've picked up from our environment? I mean, if you've ever noticed when you might be happily walking along, and then suddenly your mood changes for no apparent reason, or a sudden thought enters your mind which comes out of left field, and before you know it, you're suddenly in a bad mood. It's at times like these that we need to use that Virgo analytical function of asking, why did we just think that, or why are we feeling this? Because the thing is, if it is coming from within ourselves, then it highlights what we need to do, or highlights an area that requires our attention, so that we can change it. However, if there's no apparent reason for that thought to come, quite often it's something that we've picked up in our environment, and if we don't question it quickly, it can suddenly become a chain of thoughts in our minds, which then trigger emotional reactions that bring us down again. So during this Neptune retrograde, it's important that we learn discernment, and we engage in some kind of spiritual practice. It may be useful to spend a few days in solitude each day. By solitude, I don't mean that we necessarily isolate people, or we seek to become hermits or anything like that. Sometimes all we need is a few minutes each day, but we need to have that time with ourselves so that we can become grounded, be centered within ourselves, and to help us release any psychic issue, any issues that we've picked up from around us, or to release any energy in us that isn't operating around love or anything like that. And it gives us an opportunity to calm our minds down and separate out what is our stuff versus what is stuff that's coming from other people around us. It's also, with Neptune retrograde, this is a time where the vibration we give off has a much more potent effect on the collective conscious now than it does when Neptune is direct, because the walls and the veils of illusion are increasingly thin, and the walls of the ego, if you like, are also much more porous. So this is a time where we need to be very mindful of what kind of energy we're giving out. Are we giving out a loving, peaceful kind of vibration, or are we operating in fear? Do we typically feeling a lot of anger, and is that the energy that we're adding to the collective energies around us? So, because the thing is, the more we work on ourselves, the more we shed the lower vibrations and release the illusions that drive those lower vibrations, and move upwards in terms of our vibration, or we increase our vibration through focusing more and more on love and releasing more and more of our fear. The love that we give off has potential to uplift the people around us and increase the vibration of the collective consciousness around us. But it's important that we don't try to do this through seeking to save people. It's about working on ourselves, because the thing is, if we work on ourselves, everyone else naturally benefits. If we always focusing on other people and never focusing on working on ourselves, then we keep ourselves in holding or in a stagnant position, because we're not working on ourselves, we're not getting rid of old issues, we're not releasing old emotional patterns and old attachments that no longer serve us. Because one form of escapism that can happen is the need to help other people, the need to like workaholism. So it's important that we don't, during this time, try to drown ourselves in work or focus on everyone else around us to the exclusion of ourselves as a means of avoiding what we're feeling. It's important that we do take that time for ourselves and get real with ourselves by facing whatever delusions we have. And if we are someone who's typically rushing around all the time, looking after others and never focusing on ourselves, it's time that we do spend those few minutes with ourselves every day. to connect with who we are, to connect with our emotions, and understand how do we really feel about things. And it's also through spiritual practice, it's learning to love ourselves for who we are. And the dissolving energy of Neptune in Pisces, especially with this retrograde energy, gives us an opportunity to shed illusions, to dissolve old emotional things that keep us from loving ourselves. It's learning to face, because some of the gifts of Pisces include things like empathy, compassion, psychic sensitivity, and tapping into universal love. But the thing is, we can't give that to other people if we haven't worked on ourselves. So if we do have a tendency to always rush around after other people to neglect of ourselves, then we need to work on ourselves and learn to relax, to not always rush around, and to focus on the relationship we have with ourselves, with our own internal landscape. And we use this window of opportunity that Neptune retrograde brings to delve deeper into our core sense of who we are, to release all the limiting self-definitions that we hold on to, that keep the ego strong but prevent us from being who we really are, and learn to love ourselves unconditionally. Because it's all very well and good talking about unconditional love, but we can only give that to other people if we can give it to ourselves. So the Neptune retrograde gives us all an opportunity to develop greater love and self-compassion and through doing this we heal ourselves, and then we become a healing presence. Because if we can fill ourselves up with that unconditional love by loving ourselves to the point that it's overflowing, then the love that's overflowing from us, because we're completely full from inside to the point where we can't hold any more, it's all going to flow out. It's by loving ourselves in this manner where the love is overflowing and radiates out into the environment that we can truly help people and truly show unconditional love. Because now the love isn't coming from a bucket, for example, it's coming from the equivalent of a hose pipe. The water is constantly flowing, or from a river. The water is constantly flowing, i.e. the love, and because of that the well never runs dry, and we can keep giving love to other people because we're not draining our own reserves of love. We're allowing unconditional love or universal love to flow through us, to fill us up, to heal us, and then to flow out of us into the environment around us. And by doing this, people naturally benefit because we're now radiating that universal love, and it's not through trying to manipulate things through our actions. It's about our energy, it's about our presence or our essence. Because if we can develop that unconditional love and that compassion first for ourselves, so that we understand it and can when we can deliver it, and once we've worked on ourselves we can then give it to other people. But it's vitally important that we have some kind of spiritual practice and that we focus on things that keep us grounded, like exercises that allow us to remain grounded in the body, like making sure we're eating wholesome foods rather than junk, so that it's food that nourishes the body, keeps it grounded, keeps it healthy, and supports the high vibrations coming in. Because if we want to raise our vibration, we also have to change some of our habits and our routines, and especially around things like food and exercise. So if at the moment the habits that we have aren't conducive for increasing our vibration, then this is an opportunity for us to work on this through changing our thought patterns, changing the foods we eat, so eating more natural food that's naturally high in vibration rather than eating lots of processed food which keeps the body's vibration low. It's through doing things which naturally increase the vibration in the body that allows us to attain that high vibration and be more comfortable with it. Otherwise, this high vibration coming in through Neptune retrograde in Pisces will often produce anxiety instead, and then we will indulge in escapism. We will indulge in things, could be For some people it's alcohol, for some it's drugs, others it could be sugary foods which produce a temporary change in consciousness, so dissolves the boundaries briefly but then feel worse after. For some it's compulsive workaholism, for some it's excessive sleeping, and for some it's just non-action. So for the pitfalls of Pisces, especially addiction and codependency, to be avoided, we have to work on ourselves, become grounded within ourselves, and to allow that higher vibrational energy to flow through us, and to work with it to see what illusions have we held on to that are actually detrimental that we now need to let go of, and what habits do we need to change in life to support the process whereby our bodies become better able to handle the high vibration, which allows us to better embody it, because we're now grounded in the present moment in the body, and yet that high vibration is actually flowing through us. And through achieving that collective unity of body, mind and spirit, and allowing the energies of Pisces to increase the vibration throughout all three of those, and to achieve a much greater sense of wholeness within ourselves and move closer towards things like universal love, peace, compassion and joy. If we work on ourselves during the Neptune retrograde and allow the dissolving energy of Neptune to release the illusions that keep us playing small or limit our self-definition, to allow universal love to flow through us through embracing it and giving it to ourselves first, and then once we've healed ourselves enough that we understand it and we can actually give it, we then give it to others without condition, but not in a way where we try to manipulate people to do things a certain way. It's important that throughout the entire process we honour each person's free will, we make sure that our own is honoured and respected, and we make sure that we do not try and seek rescuing from ourselves. We take responsibility for ourselves and develop that inner spiritual strength, whereby we're strong and complete within ourselves. We're not seeking other people to rescue us or in any way, shape or form, and we move more closer to that universal love and that connection to divinity that is at the core of us all. At some level we all seek that union with a higher power, but for whatever reason or whatever conditioning we've been through, it gets subverted into something else and becomes dysfunctional. But if we can work on ourselves through opening the crown chakra and making sure that we're grounded throughout the entire process, so we don't drift off into la la land or engage in just escapism and fantasy during the Neptune retrograde, then we have an opportunity for immense transformation through releasing the old, allowing the guidance of spirit to show us what no longer serves us and let it go, and embrace new concepts or the new insights of who we are, and allow the spiritual energy to or that higher spiritual energy to become our default state. This only comes about through engaging in spiritual practice, being real with ourselves, and trusting that by allowing that higher energy to flow through us and to connect with it and give it to ourselves, we will become much more whole, we will become much more loving and connected, and through engaging with discernment we can make sure that we're not pulled into other people's illusions, we're not tricked into going down a path of illusion that's dangerous or going to be detrimental for us, and we seek to empower one another through radiating universal love rather than trying to preach to other people, tell them what to do. If we embody universal love, people will feel it, and that alone can potentially serve as a catalyst for people to try and go through the same process. But it's important that we're not trying to make other people go through it. It's important we focus on ourselves, and by raising our own vibration, the people around us naturally benefit, rather than having us trying to preach to them or save them in any way, shape or form. There's a lot to take on board there, but I hope Neptune retrograde brings you many blessings. I hope it brings you significant transformation, and are drawing closer to spirit and closer to universal love. And if we can all work on ourselves through increasing the amount of love we have, the amount of patience, compassion and joy we have, if we can radiate these qualities by working on ourselves rather than focusing on other people to avoid doing the work, then the potential for significant transformation to happen collectively is increased, because by working on ourselves, the collective naturally benefits from that, because the health of the individual improves, the health of the whole improves. So I hope Neptune Retrograde brings you many blessings, greater insights and greater self-love and love for all. Take care, may you be blessed by the Neptune Retrograde.